IVF available for more women across the country are being introduced today under new guidelines from the health watchdog NICE.
Before today, where you live determined how many rounds of fertility treatment you were allowed on the NHS. Well, we spoke to one couple living in Bolton who say they were victims of the so-called unfair postcode lottery.
We've always wanted, to have a child of our own, and we've always said it will make our little family complete, definitely.
It's a bit sad to think now that we can live on one side of the street, have everything a child could possibly want, and on the other side could be an identical family like ours, and we get one, they get three. We talked about moving house.
Yeah. You look at all options, don't you, at the end of the day? And I think it's wrong that you put in that position where you are looking at how you can make the system work for you. We were very fortunate that my parents, when it didn't work, both said to us, without a shadow of a doubt, if you want to have another go, then we will support you financially, which is just amazing.
We're very fortunate, that we have Daniel. It was meant to be.
Well, we're joined now by Jessica Hepburn, who is author of The Pursuit of Motherhood, and Caroline Farrow is from the Catholic Universe newspaper. Very good morning to both of you. Jessica, the guidelines are that you should be able to get 3 cycles of IVF on the NHS. What was the situation for you?
Well, the situation for me, I've been on a really long and heartbreaking journey, and that I've described in my book, and I had to go through private treatment.
Is that because you weren't offered the cycles on the NHS?
Yeah, well, when I started treatment, I was in my early 30s, and actually I was living in an area where you were only allowed 1 cycle of treatment if you were under the age of 35. And of course, you have to spend quite a lot of time trying to conceive before you're even being offered treatment. So I was in a situation where I had to go to private treatment. And this is what's so unfair about the situation at the moment. It really depends on where you live as to whether you can get treatment or not. And that's what I really believe needs to change.
So, Caroline, when you hear a story like that, I think you had 6 pregnancies, didn't you?
Yeah, I've sadly suffered a lot of miscarriages and also an ectopic pregnancy that was discovered very late.
You see, when you hear a story like that, it's hard to deny that someone like that having NHS treatment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking to listen, but I think what Jess's story is illustrating to us is that actually we've got in something of a pickle over female fertility in this country, because we, on the one hand, have lots of people wanting to conceive and wanting IVF, and then on the other hand, we've heard this week or last week that 4 out of 10 women who were presenting for an abortion over the age of 40 weren't using any birth control. And I think we have to remember that IVF as a treatment isn't very efficient. If you go for IVF and you're over the age of 35, then you've got a 25% chance of it succeeding, which then drops to 20% when you're 37 or 38. And then when you're 40, it's down to about 12%. And we also shouldn't forget that for every 1 live birth that's born from IVF, 30 embryos are created, most of which are destroyed. Since 1991, over 4 million embryos have been...
But that's a criticism of the treatment, isn't it? It's not necessarily about funding, because it's the best thing on offer, and for people that desperately want a baby, it's a chance they want to take.
But what we also have to remember, and infertility is absolutely devastating, and I'm not writing that off, and I realise I come from a very privileged position because I've conceived 4 children. Naturally, I don't have problems with conception, so I realise it's very easy. But I think what we have to remember is that infertility is the 2nd greatest cause of women aged between 18 and 45 going to the doctor. It is a big problem. So what we should be doing is putting more money into looking at the underlying causes of infertility.
All right. Jessica, the new guidelines are to reinforce this idea that there shouldn't be a postcode lottery. All local health authorities should be offering these 3 cycles. Do you think that NICE saying this will change the situation for women desperate for children?
I really hope so. I mean, I think it's important to reiterate that they have actually been saying this for a while, but it hasn't been enforced. But they are now saying it more strongly. Yeah. And I was just really struck by what you said earlier about Stephen Sutton saying, you know, we've got one shot at life, and a woman's fertility is short, and the urge to have your own biological child is huge. And we invented IVF in this country, and I just really hope that we can provide equality for women across the country going through this.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Jessica. We really appreciate it. Caroline, thank you very much indeed as well.